Yeah, I'm Alex Filipenko. You did this poll of whether the media are right-leaning or left-leaning, and the overwhelming majority said left-leaning. But do you think that that's in part because for 4 years we had been fed so many lies and so much misinformation from the extreme right?
David, that question was directed to you.
I mean, look, I think there were plenty of polls. If you go back like 10, 20, 30 years, there's a media organization. There's a guy named Brent Bozell who was doing studies of media bias. And if you were to actually look at how people in the media voted, it was 90+% Democrat. I mean, it's been a thing for a long time. And now it came to a head, I would say, during the Trump administration, because the press, I think, in going after Trump, gave up something important, which is they gave up their objectivity. I mean, they flatly would. I mean, it was, whether you want to call it Trump derangement syndrome or whatever. I mean, they now saw it as their duty not to report objectively both sides, but they would just flatly declare things that Trump were saying were false. You still see this today. I'm not saying that all the things he said were true. Maybe he did say false things, but normally if you wanted to say that one person's saying something false, you would get a source on the other side and then you would quote them. And then that's how you would basically construct the article. And you had the press basically almost really become unhinged. And I think they kind of ripped the umpire jersey off their backs in order to chase after Trump. And I think, ultimately they got him. Trump was a one-term president, but I think that it's really contributed to the polarized media environment we have now.
Any way to get that referee jersey back on the press, you think?
No.
Sachs?
Well, how? I mean,
The problem is the journalism and media have changed so much.
The nature of press has changed.
Yeah.
Right. It's fragmenting and splintering, much like everything else. There's, we talk about this at some of our companies. I keep referring to our companies because I know a lot of people are here today, but, we talk about the fragmentation of food brands, for example, or the fragmentation of people's kind of individual media selection. The same is happening in the press, where, you're now kind of going to pick and choose the 5 articles you want to read, as opposed to buying one of 3 newspapers and reading everything in that newspaper each day. And I think that's fueling this, which is not necessarily, in my opinion, and I've said this before, not necessarily a constructed or designed decision of the quote unquote press, but it's more a phenomenon that arises from the individuals that consume the media, and they make selections. And that selection bias ends up driving the clicks and the votes and the counts and the prints of that particular form of media. And guess what we end up choosing? The stuff that triggers us more and makes us feel some stronger emotion. And then it creates a feedback loop. And that's where this is coming from. And I think it's enabled by the internet, not necessarily bad actors at platform companies, but it's inevitable in a decentralized world or a platformed world. That's where we're going to go.
And also part of the story is advertising went away as an option as Google and Facebook took over those markets. So they went subscription. And how do you get subscribers? You pick a side. You can't really go down the middle.
I want to feel something emotional when I click and buy and spend 99 cents or whatever. Like, it's not, I don't want to be bored to death. Everything is so stimulating in this digital world. Like, I want to be stimulated.
Right. So there was a really interesting poll that came out today that speaks to this, which is they asked, people on the left and the right, what do you think the country's biggest problem is? On the left, the number one answer was Trump supporters. So now on the right, it was a little bit more varied. It was the Taliban, it was China, it was crime.
Well, what should we be most concerned about objectively from each of you? What do you think the top 3 things we should be concerned about as Americans?
I don't think the right answer for either side is like the other half of America. Well, I think that happens because you haven't varied your information diet. You're sitting there watching one station on cable news, and you're being fed. You're basically being fed this stuff that the others demonizing the other side, right? And the other side is being otherized,